Calls for justice ring across Brazil as thousands take to the streets to bid farewell to Joao Alberto Silveira Freitas. Workers at South Africa's public broadcaster lock horns with management over looming retrenchments. And armed insurgency disenfranchises more than 1 million voters in Burkina Faso. Hello and welcome to TeleSUR. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the South. In Brazil, the funeral for Joao Alberto Silveira Freitas, a black man killed by security guards on Friday, has taken place in Porto Alegre. Freitas was killed by two white security guards outside a Carrefour supermarket. A video posted on social media showed one guard restraining him while the other inflicted repeated blows to his face. Other clips showed a guard kneeling on top of Freitas' back. According to local media, paramedics attempted to resuscitate the 40-year-old man at the scene, but it was already too late and he succumbed to his wounds. Protesters in Colombia have marked a year since the national strike against the government of Iván Duque. Hundreds of people, including teachers, students, and workers' unions, protested in the streets of Bogotá. They marched with drums and banners denouncing inequality. Riot police in black uniforms from the ESMAD unit threw tear gas at protesters who fired back with stones and Molotov cocktails. A police car was vandalized as protesters denounced the ESMAD for decades of police brutality. On Monday, students will also take to the streets to denounce the murder of Dylan Cruz a year ago by Colombia's riot police.
We are more students, because students are the future of the country. And it is not simply seeing the fact that this is happening, but putting on our shoes, supporting it, because it's a national strike. You may be fine, but someone else is not well, and it's thinking about equity.
After so many deaths, after so much police abuse, clearly the students, the people, and the citizens are tired. Here, not only are there students from the National University, but there are other Colombians who are tired and annoyed by police abuse.
I think that at some point Colombia had to wake up, if it did a year ago and is no longer doing it now. Maybe because of the pandemic, that's fine. But I think that students now, we don't care about that. We care more than a virus or whatever. Seriously, the future of Colombia.
While hundreds of Guatemalans burnt parts of the Congress building on Saturday to protest the approval of the 2021 budget and demand the resignation of President Alejandro Giammattei. The incident came as some 7,000 people were demonstrating in front of the National Palace in Guatemala City against the budget. Protesters say the bill was negotiated and passed by legislators in secret while the Central American country was distracted by the fallout of back-to-back hurricanes and the COVID-19 pandemic. Among various cuts, Guatemalans were angered because lawmakers approved $65,000 to pay for meals for themselves, but cut funding for coronavirus patients, education, and human rights agencies. Later on in the afternoon, security agents fired tear gas into crowds, injuring a number of protesters, carrying the national flag and banners that said "No more corruption, Giammattei out," and "They messed with the wrong generation." The protesters filled the central square in Guatemala City in front of the old palace. President Giammattei said he has held meetings with various groups to present changes to the budget.
I was walking and they grabbed me. I didn't do anything. I have my constitutional right to strike.
Estamos cansados.
We are tired. There is no other way to show our repudiation, how fed up we are. We are tired of so much abuse by the authorities.
Now, before the protests turned violent, Guatemala's Vice President Guillermo Castillo urged President Giammattei to resign over his approval of the almost $13 billion budget, the largest in the country's history. Now, Giammattei had not responded publicly to that proposal, and Castillo did not share the president's reaction, but said he would not resign alone.
Unfortunately, we had not success in today's meeting, and I would therefore like to make my approach very clear to the President. It is in the country's interest that we both tender our resignations, him as President and I as Vice President of the Republic. But let's do it together. I have made it very clear to the President that things are not right on many government issues, and the decisions that have been taken I don't agree with. I have not been consulted on them because of the lack of communication we have with the President. This is also due to a citizen demand. We have been told that things are not as people hope.
We'll take a short break now. Join us in a few. Welcome back. Millions of people in Burkina Faso are voting in an election marred with accusations of fraud. President Rochemar Christian Kabore is expected to win re-election based on opinion polls. The opposition has threatened to reject the results over what they've called a huge operation orchestrated by those in power to carry out massive fraud. More than 6.5 million will be able to vote, but the turnout is expected to be much lower due to an armed insurgency linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group. This has forced the Electoral Commission to close polling stations in the north and eastern regions of the country.
All these facts challenge us. This is why we decided yesterday to file a complaint with the prosecutor of Faso. But we are well aware of the slowness of our judicial institutions. What we want is not to wait 2 or 3 weeks after the elections for a decision. We want it to be decided now, and it is you, Burkinabes, and your vigilance that will help us to do that.
Dozens of workers at the South African Broadcasting Corporation have protested against plans to retrench hundreds of staff. The workers said the retrenchments would have a devastating impact on them and their families. The state broadcaster last week issued retrenchment notices to 400 permanent workers and cancelled the contracts of more than 1,000 freelancers, citing financial challenges. They have vowed, the workers that is, to continue protesting until management withdraws all the dismissal letters issued to them. Dozens of protesters have rallied in the Angolan capital, Luanda, demanding an end to government corruption and police violence. They have accused the government of failing to take decisive action against public officials accused of engaging in corrupt practices. They also denounced the unwillingness to punish police officers who assaulted protesters last month.
The demonstrations will not stop in Luanda. That's to say that on December 10th, there will be another, and we invite all those people who are at home, young scientists, young people who know that the country is not in good shape, to show up on December 10th.
Staying in Africa, the Ethiopian government says its forces have taken over a key town that was previously in the hands of Tigray rebels. A statement by the Defense Ministry said that the town of Adigrat, located about 120 kilometers of the Tigrayan capital, Mekele, was now under the control of government soldiers. Meanwhile, on Sunday, the Air Force chief revealed that armed drones have been deployed in the battle against the Tigray rebel forces.
In the last 2.5 years, we've made considerable effort in training and preparation to use unmanned aerial vehicles. This junta thought that, as in the past, you dig trenches and fight in the trenches with tanks. This has stopped. This is one area in which they miscalculated. The drones we are armed with are made by our own technicians, our own pilots. We are not too small for the extremist group to call other country.
We're taking one last break. Don't go away. Welcome back. In Belgium, several hundred people have marched in the city of Liege in remembrance of a barber who killed herself due to the hardships brought by the pandemic. Despite a police ban, the people of Liege took to the streets to mourn the death of Alison Jardin. The 24-year-old barber, who offered free cuts to COVID-19 patients this summer, said she couldn't handle the economic loss facing her salon. It was forced to shut because it was considered non-essential. Mourners said Alison's death is quite symbolic of the situation of small business owners who struggle during lockdown and would need substantial support from the government in order to survive.
We all struggle. We go on through life like that. It is true that when it is not our life, we tend to forget other people's problems. She was living those difficulties, and I think things became too difficult for her. It was more than what she could handle.
Giving a single day, 2,000 people can enter a supermarket, touch all the products, and take one thing home with them, and if coronavirus can be passed on by touching plastic. Please explain to me why small shopkeepers who lives depend on reopening cannot open, and why are big supermarkets receiving help?
In other news, hundreds have taken to the streets in Kyrgyzstan to protest a proposed constitution that critics say would empower the presidency and damage freedom of speech. Several hundred protesters who gathered in the center of the capital, Bishkek, held up signs decrying a constitution, a reference to the absolutist rulers who dominated Central Asia for centuries. Constitutional amendments currently undergoing public discussion would return to cabinet, forming powers to the president and allow incumbent leaders to run for office. Initiators say the draft constitution should be put to a referendum on January 10th, the same day that the country is holding presidential elections.
This constitution is a new project that is now being proposed. It has a very simple goal: to push educated people out of the country, to live in the country only those people who will accept without any critical thinking about power, to support the Khanate, support the Caliphate.
The fact is that the proposed referendum is a new draft constitution that came out of nowhere, and who knows who its authors are. This is a completely illegitimate procedure, and it is necessary to return it to its legal course.
Tens of thousands of Taiwanese protesters have marched in Taipei in an anti-government demonstration targeting a range of measures. Protesters are angry over labor issues, media freedom, and a recent controversial decision to allow the import of U.S. pork containing ractopamine, a feed additive used by U.S. farmers to promote leaner meat in livestock. The drug is banned by the European Union but is legal in the United States. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen made the announcement to lift restrictions on U.S. pork in August in an effort to pave the way for a future bilateral trade pact with Washington. Imports of American pork will affect Taiwanese pig farmers and vendors very seriously because ractopamine is not allowed here. But now our government wants to import them. It's a slap in the face for our farmers.
I'm a mom from Taichung. I'm here in Taipei for the next generation protesting against the import of pork containing ractopamine because it's very poisonous. And Tsai Ing-wen now wants us to eat these kinds of poisonous food, so I'm here to protest.
Iran's foreign ministry has said it is engaging in a diplomatic exchange with the U.S. despite the many crimes that Washington has committed against the Persian nation in the last 4 decades.
The future of relations between Iran and the United States is not simple, as America has committed repeated crimes against the Iranian people over the past 40 years. These are serious crimes, plus other crimes that they specifically committed. The martyrdom of General Soleiman is in this category. The list can neither be cut down nor forgotten. It is natural that between two members of the United Nations, there are well-thought-out exchanges within a known framework, but this does not mean that Iran will forget this list of crimes.
Thousands of Israelis took to the streets on Saturday night to continue months of protest demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Braving cold, wet weather, several thousands gathered outside Netanyahu's official residence in Jerusalem. Some protesters carried makeshift submarines, referring to one of Netanyahu's graft scandal, which is connected to the purchase of warships and submarines from a German conglomerate. The Prime Minister faces corruption charges, and protesters also accuse him of mishandling the coronavirus crisis. The first female-only boxing tournament in Palestine is taking place against all odds. What was once the monopoly of men and a sport that women were kept away from has attracted dozens of girls in the Gaza Strip. 12 girls participated, in the tournaments that had 6 different weight categories. Their coach says he was proud of organizing the tournament despite being cash-strapped and hopes to take the boxers out of Gaza for regional competitions. The team has so far received an invitation to participate in a boxing event in Kuwait, but it is not yet clear if Israeli authorities will allow them to travel out of the besieged enclave.
I used to watch boxers like Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali. I love watching them fight because they are really good and often win their fights in the first round. Mike Tyson has won more than 55 championships.
Many people think that what we are doing is wrong, that we are acting in defiance of morals and traditions. But for me, my family and friends, it is all normal. And they all support me and want to sign up themselves after watching us. For me, this is something very beautiful and normal.
An artist in the United Kingdom is raising awareness on the risk of thousands of children directly dying or dying indirectly from COVID-19. The artist Sand in Your Eye created an 11,000 square meter art installation on a hill by Hebden Bridge in northwest England. The work is supported by UNICEF and shows a child's face made out of sand, and it's called 6,000 Children. It aims to raise awareness about the situation of over 6,000 children who are at risk of dying from indirect causes of the COVID-19 pandemic. With that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I am Doris Polo. Thanks for watching.